And we are live. Welcome to the latest in the Page Black Business Leaders series. And today we are talking data security, IT security. How do you keep information safe? And I'm adding that to the title because I got a call saying, hey, wait, are we doing data security or IT security? And I was like, oh, there's a difference. And so maybe we'll learn about that today. So let me get started. I'm going to just give us a quick intro. I'm going to quickly talk about what we're up to with this Page Black Business Leaders series. And to do that, I'm going to look at the camera. And so really what I'm up to with this is I really think of leadership in a business as a little bit of a practice that people need to work on. And we're all constantly trying to improve everything that we're doing. At least in my company, that's a big premise of who we are. And so I'm looking for answers all the time. And so I run across challenges and I often don't know the answers. And I see that happen all over the place. And so my goal here is, what are the challenges that middle market business leaders face? And then how can they begin to think about those challenges, understand some of the risks that they're facing, come up with some concrete steps as they move forward to solve some of these challenges. Today, the challenge is going to be IT and data security. We'll find out what I did wrong in my introduction there, and they can correct me because I'm not the expert that my panel is, and I'll be introducing them in just a minute. Later this month, we're going to have some experts on how do you make difficult business decisions, what's happening in marketing as we're exiting COVID. And there's a couple other sessions, so this is good. We're here every Thursday noon Mountain. That would be 11 a.m. Pacific, if I can remember my times, and then 2 p.m. Eastern. So that said, let me introduce. I'm going to pop over and I'm going to introduce my panel here quickly. We have David Jacobs, and David Jacobs is the founder and CEO of Gigit. And David is a serial entrepreneur and a 20-year IT industry leader. They are a cybersecurity firm. And in the 5-year life, Gigit has already acquired 2 companies and evolved from a behind-the-scenes IT staffing provider to a direct B2B cyber vulnerability services solutions company. And so they provide gap analysis, risk identification, testing, prevention, and compliance solutions to Fortune 1000 companies. And I bet that they will help you if you have questions as well. My second guest, as I've been corrected, is David D. Camillus. David, if I got that wrong, you can yell at me right now. He's the VP of Sales and Marketing at Platte River Networks. They're an 18-year-old managed IT services firm based here in Denver. They're nationally known, have a great reputation. They've employed 65 people, and they fully manage IT services, including cybersecurity, help desk, infrastructure management, project and procurement services for over 100 companies across multiple industries with the 10 to 500 employee mark. So if I've missed something there, let me know, David. And then finally, we have Tom Ramar. He is the Vice President of Sales at Nucleus. Tom used to work for the NSA, as also for the Navy. He graduated at the top of his class in the field of cryptology. So I believe that's how you, that's an interesting conversation. I'm gonna have to buy you coffee and learn more about that. Currently, Tom works for Nucleus. Let me see here. And what Nucleus does, I'm gonna have to do this from memory because I'm not reading fast enough. Nucleus they scan code for data security errors, and then we'll update your developers to make sure that you can correct those quickly. Tom, did I get that right?
That's perfect, Mike.
All right. Well, that's one thing I've done right today so far. So we'll see how that goes. All right. My name is Mike Black. Not a lot about me today. Basically, I'm the CEO, managing partner of Page Black. We're an integrated marketing firm. What we do is build custom marketing plans for middle market companies. Some of the challenges that we take on. So send us these kinds of challenges. Your marketing department wants more money and to try new things, but you're not necessarily seeing better results. We'll come in and build a custom plan to help make that happen. You know you're better than your competition, but you don't understand why they get more attention. Your marketing's just not happening. Maybe it's not consistent, not measured, or just not effective. Give us a shout. And then finally, if your customers, we're going to do a webinar on this one coming up soon. If your customers don't know everything that you do, you have lots of things that you offer and they don't know about that, we'll help with that. And then finally, you want to go into a new target market. Maybe that's new people that you want to target, new demographic of kind of business that you want to target, or new geography. We'll help you build a plan for that. So enough of that. Let's get on to if I can get the thing to move forward. I'm going to introduce my first question. We'll get the panel on the screen and start with some answers. And so my first question comes with my belief that, there's this 80-20 principle that, 80% of the work you do, it doesn't necessarily produces 20% of the results. 20% of the work you do produces 80% of the results. And IT security or data security is huge. That's the comment I had whenever I asked anybody that, around being on this panel. They're like, look, this is big. I'm not sure how to get at the whole scope. So my question becomes, where is that 20% of that question? And Dave Jacobs, Let's start with you. Where is that 20% for people that are looking at data security or IT security?
I would say, multi-factor authentication is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
SIM, endpoint protection that these guys could probably talk more about, a good patch management plan, and disaster recovery. So I think, those things would get you pretty far along the scale.
All right. So I'm going to, David DeCamillis, I'm going to hold on for 1 second, or maybe you guys pick who's better to say this. Tell me what SIM is, because I don't know what that is as a piece.
Yeah, I'll let Tom hit that one because he's going to do a much better job, but I can hit on how we use it. So okay. Go for it, Tom.
I was actually going to answer it in a different way. I would answer that in a way that some companies think that compliance is security, and compliance is a big word out there right now being used at the state level. Just because you're compliant to standard out there doesn't mean that you're secure. So what I would recommend organizations to do, especially in the SMB space, is to take a security assessment, figure out what's most important for your organization, and pursue that. Because you can't do everything at once. You don't have the means in which to get everything done at once, but create a plan and execute the plan. The key is, at the end of the day, for especially SMB, it's not if you breach, it's when you're breached. And as long as you can demonstrate diligence in addition to compliance and security, you're going to be okay.
So to the point of the entire series that I'm doing is how should we think about it? And you're saying one piece of that is don't rely on this list to say that I'm compliant, therefore I'm safe. That's just not enough.
Is not security. Right.
All right. And then audience out there, if you have questions, type them into LinkedIn. Sometimes we have lots, sometimes we don't. Dave Jacobs, I'm going to go back to you just because I'm not quite sure on that second step what you said. And I know David was sending it back your way. And so tell me what's SIM, and I know what some of those things are, but there was your second point. I didn't follow everything you said. Is there a definition there?
No, you were talking to the other David?
Nope, I was talking to you because that was your kind of point. Was you said you should start with dual factor authentication, which is kind of having your cell phone, and then there was another point. And I know lots, but I don't know that one.
So the multi-factor authentication, I think, is for most companies out there looking to do something is a big deal. That Colonial Pipeline, there was a case study which I can send you later that was all about DarkSide. That was the company that infiltrated them, and I don't know if you guys have seen that, but they're very, very sophisticated. They were in there for about 6 months before anybody found out about them. They deleted files, they copied everything. I mean, it's not only interesting, it's very, very scary. They also did a whole financial analysis on these guys, and that's what they do in these ransomware attacks. And so when they're coming up with the money to turn back everything on, they already know that you can afford to pay that. And the interesting thing about this sophisticated attack is if they had multi-factor authentication by itself, those guys couldn't have got in.
Yep.
That is fascinating that they're actually doing almost a case or like a business case for you to pay the ransom. Right. That they're pulling your own financial data and building a business case that we know you can pay this many millions of dollars. Yeah. That's new news to me, and I tend to follow this because I'm a little bit paranoid about this stuff. I'm a multi-factor everywhere. All right, David, I'm going to go to you just for that first question of, you punted off to Tom to give his answer. What is your answer to the 20%? What's the 20% that people need to do in order to get that 80% benefit?
So my punt was because I knew Tom would have more expertise on the SIM side, but in leading to that, so something else that we recommend is having a managed threat response team actually watching the network, looking for those anomalies, and they use SIMs to do that. So what they'll do is this response team, they have their agents within the environment on all the endpoints. They're looking for anomalies within the business that are not normal compute, right? And that avoids, if they get past multi-factor authentication and they get in there, they see the anomaly, they lock it down, they remediate, they mitigate.
It's automated. Mike.
Yep.
Very fast.
I'm sorry.
It's it occurs all by itself.
Yeah, but we like to have a human team behind it as well, using US-based security engineers that, a SOC is what it's called, Security Operations Center. So 24/7, they're looking for those anomalies. Now, Dave also mentioned BDR. You got to have good encrypted backups so that you can recover quickly, so that if they actually encrypt your data and try to charge you a ransom, you don't care. You can recover from it. The problem is if they've been in there for months, they're getting into the backups too. So you really have to make sure that they're not getting in, but when they do, immediately, and you can do something about it quickly.
Right, because now if thinking folks of ransomware, what happens is they encrypt. This is what happened in those big cases. They encrypt all your data, and they say, we're not going to let you have this data until you pay us these millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands or hundreds, whatever that is for your company. They know, it sounds like know exactly what you can pay, which is frightening. And though they
one more thing.
So if you back up to a month ago, they're still in.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why that's key. But one more thing, and both Tom and Dave hit on it, is it's all about the employee. I think the stats are anywhere from 90 to 95% of these breaches occur because your employee does the wrong thing, clicks the wrong thing. Exactly, Tom. And they're getting hit from all sides, whether it's phishing emails, through social media, through websites, bad websites. So really focusing on what you can do to protect the employee, to give them the inability to click on the wrong thing is important. Having one login tied to multi-factor so that you know exactly where they're going and it's controlled. Doing user training. And the user training should be focused on your infrastructure and what they're doing every day. It shouldn't just be broad user training, because the bad guys are getting in and they're trying to recreate what your employee sees every day. If it's a Microsoft message, if it's a password reset for the application you use to run your business, your CRM or your manufacturing application. So that's really areas that we focus on. And Tom, you got your hand up.
David, yeah, I completely agree. The biggest menace that we have inside to allow folks in our network from a security standpoint is the employee, more specifically the untrained employee that clicks on the email. I received an email yesterday. I canceled my Visa card. There was fraud on that card, and ironically enough and independently, I received an email from Netflix saying they couldn't charge my card, and all I did was look at the email address. It was not from Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
It was not. Right? I almost clicked on that. And just to let you know too, the FBI reported last year Google, in April of last year, that they blocked more than 18 million related phishing emails each day related to COVID because people were so sensitive to it. So to David's point, training is very simple and very important.
All right, very good. Dave Jacobs, you've got some look on your face like you got something to say. Go for it.
Well, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but 5 years ago, when we were just starting out this company, I got hacked 2 times in a row. and it was really scary because, they basically, they got me, they impersonated, my emails and sent it off to the bookkeeper and sent invoices, which if we had enough money back then, she would have paid it.
Mm-hmm.
So she called me up and she goes, "Hey Dave, I can't pay these 2 invoices today." I go, "What are you talking about?" So I brought in this other cybersecurity company that later on we bought, and that's really how I got into it. And it was, clicking on a link, etc. And now I'm real conscious of the stuff that comes in, and they are getting really, really good. Like you said, Tom, you really have to look at some of these things pretty carefully because a lot of times they'll emulate other things that you're doing, and if you're going really quick, you'll pop on and screw it up. But I've already made enough errors that I'm pretty careful now.
Very good, and you're a brave guy bringing that up. David, you were going to say something.
Yeah, with COVID, what we found is that you have all these. So we had roughly 5,000 users amongst 100 companies go from going into the office every day and clicking on their secure computer on their secure network, and within a week moved home. And most of those home computers are, excuse the audience, pieces of shit. They're crappy. They're not locked down. They don't have a firewall. And here they are logging into the corporate infrastructure from this unsecured home computer. So it's not a surprise. I think some of the stats are, the attack, ransomware attacks went up 700% in the last year because they're going after these home users. So that the importance, like Tom hit on, of training your employees is even more important now. And the remote workforce, it's going to stay. People are realizing that they can still have productive staff from home. We're not seeing them all come back, right? Some of them are staying.
Yeah, I'm never going back. No, I'll own up that I also have clicked on one of those emails.
And Mike, well, I don't know what happened. I didn't hear the beep on that word.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm not fast enough. If I get banned from LinkedIn, I know whose fault it is. So I also, Dave, I've done the same thing.
So real quick.
Yep.
Mike, you there?
Oh,
okay, we skipped there. Just to quantify that just a little bit more. IBM Security X-Force, in some cases, the ransomware amount was upwards of $40 million. 40 million. And the average downtime, just the downtime your company or organization is down, is 283K. So it's important to quantify what those actions and impacts are.
All right. And so 2 things on that. One, I also have clicked on an email. I swear it was the clone of a LinkedIn message email. And I was like, oh, well, I answer messages on LinkedIn all the time. This one's safe. It had everything was right. And I clicked on it. Thank gosh, my antivirus software said, no, you can't go to that website. And so it saved me. And so I'm even more careful. I won't click on links. I just really won't click on links and emails anymore. It's a hassle sometimes because I have to go log into the service or whatever it is, then go find out whatever notification it is and find where I need to go and fix or whatever that is. And, but it's worth it. The other thought I have, and it's kind of a follow on from this 20%. What I think happens with, there's all this data, and Tom, you just brought this up, this enormous data that's really can be for that pipeline, it's millions of dollars. It can be really consequential. And I think what happens for business leaders is they go, 2 things happen. One, they shut down a little bit because it's overwhelming. The risk is overwhelming if you're hit. And then 2, there's a thought of, well, it's not going to be me. And so I'm going to just ask you guys to respond to that. That's really what I think happens in their head, right? Is that unfair? Or am I wrong? Yeah? Okay, Tom, what's your response to that? What do you tell a business leader that says, I know the risk is big, but we're small. We're not important. They're not going to come after me.
I always laugh. I spent 24 years in the Navy, the same group with the NSA. And we used to laugh that all rules in the Navy are written in blood because somebody dies, if something goes wrong, they're like, oh, we shouldn't do that. Let's make a rule, right? So you're going to get breached. Sitting back, complacency is going to land you in a place where you don't want to be with the state AG at the end of the day. The fines may not be big now, but they will be into the future. So you've got to be showing some level of diligence and compliance. Compliance, way the state laws are written, they don't tell you what or how, they tell you what to do, not how to do it. Okay, so a lot of firms or suppliers will use an ISO 9001 framework to demonstrate compliance. And even if you're not compliant yet, it's okay. As long as you can show that you're working towards compliance, you're going to be fine. But you can't sit back on your heels and do nothing.
Yeah.
All right. David, what's your thought on that?
Well, we tell our clients it's not a question of if you're going to get hit, it's a question of when. And some stats that similar to what Tom threw out is we've seen downtime. The average downtime is now 3 weeks when a business gets hit. So what we tell our customers is, can you go without revenue for 3 weeks? Because if you're froze, the assets are frozen. Look at what happened to CDOT. I mean, they got hit twice, and that affected the supply chain down the path, because we work with a lot of construction companies that were hurt because they weren't getting paid by CDOT. So it's not a question of if, it's when, and what are you doing to prepare yourself to not only not get hit, but can you recover same day, next day?
All right, Dave, your face says you got a response to that.
No, David just made me think of something. The John Chambers, a few years ago he was the former CEO of Cisco, And he said there's two types of companies: ones that have been breached, and the others that don't know they've been breached.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
and not that I think that's 100% accurate. I don't think it's that far away. But as far as you were talking about small businesses, in 2020, 43% of small businesses were hacked. That's a statistic. Now, I can't remember what the statistic was, how many of them, were put out of business, but it's
60% within 6 months.
So there
Could
you
have
go.
been presented with a small spend.
All right. So audience, what I'm hearing is if your thought is that you don't need to worry about this, that you're probably a mistake. On the other hand, the advice that I'm hearing being given around training your staff not to click on links and emails, doing dual factor authentication, and there's some others in there that are above my head, but those aren't like big efforts. This isn't like taking millions of dollars. That's actually pretty cheap to do both of those things, as you got to just find some coursework and teach them. I'm going to move on to our next question really quick, gentlemen. First, before I do, go ahead. I heard a mic.
Like I was just going to add that the call to action is more clear when the average time to identify the breach is 280 days. They don't even know that they're inside there. 280, and they're siphoning off information, right? So, I mean, they're there and you don't even know it. False sense of complacency.
All right. Very good. So on that happy or maybe not happy note, I'm going to talk about our next webinar for Page Black. It is Tuesday, July 13th, 10 a.m. Mountain. 10 to 11 Mountain, and that'll be started at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. This one's on education. If you have a customer base, they don't know everything that you do, we'll tell you how to teach them. Let's move forward with our next question. And this one is, where are the gaps? What are the things that business leaders miss when it comes to IT security? And Tom is saying he has the answer.
I have a answer, not the.
Okay.
Right. One of the things that people overlook a lot, and it's becoming more prevalent in the narrative around the security space, supply chain. So if you're SMB or even large, supply chain, those that you do business with and plug into your network, how secure are they? What are they doing from a security standpoint? And are they opening up back doors into your firm? It's a big, big deal. I'm in the application security space, so I'm all the way down to individual lines of code, to making sure that you're secure. And we educate our clients, like, you need to be asking your supply chain what they're doing to secure their code for me, but there's many other things to secure. Is their code secure, and can they prove it? Supply chain.
Yep.
All right. Dave Jacob, what's your thought? What do people miss?
In regards to IT security, is what you said?
IT or data security. Remember, I'm kind of that generalist. And if you want to get specific and teach me, you go right ahead.
So, IT security, by definition, is referring to IT. Mm-hmm. So like Tom said at the beginning of this webinar, it's really the whole organization. You need to be doing an assessment on the whole organization and looking at the organization as well as the different departments as well as IT. And so I think that's an important distinction there in your question.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the correction. I know you're going to get me later too, but that's all right. I'm looking forward to it. All right.
So
David, what's your answer to that question for what are they missing? This is actually right up your alley.
Yeah, it is. So first off, with Tom, I'm sure a lot of people remember Target was hit by supply chain, the HVAC company. And if I recall, and this leads into my answer, that they actually had the monitoring in place where they could have seen that the bad guys were getting in and doing the wrong things. The IT staff of Target did not catch it. They weren't monitoring those. So that's where we see a lot of issues, is these small and mid-sized companies who have internal IT staff assume they know what they're doing, assume they're checking all the boxes, assume they have them secure. We have found that those IT staff are on an island. There's a few individuals, they're overworked. They don't have time to stay up on the most recent security certifications, security tools, best practices. They can't keep up with their ticket help desk flow and projects, let alone the cybersecurity side. So if you're a small and mid-sized business, we recommend you definitely look at bringing in an IT partner. And I think both Tom and Dave mentioned it. Have them do that assessment and make sure that there aren't holes before it's too late.
Yeah. It's very, very true. And unfortunately, executive oversight and most organization is lacking. I mean, security is an afterthought. Right? Nobody cares until you're actually breached. So it just really depends on the organization that you have. Are you conscious of the security environment that you have, what you need to protect yourself, asking themselves, am I secure? If I get breached like Target did tomorrow, what's going to occur? Do we have the controls in place? Right? Am I going to lose my job as a CEO? Things I should ask if we're breached. So it's a cultural challenge that you have. It's not just a technology challenge.
All right, so I'm hearing three things really. One, double check your supply chain and make sure the people that you work with and partner with, probably upstream and downstream, are secure.
Very important.
Yeah. Number two, make sure that you've done an assessment for your really we would call it in marketing. We look at a situation analysis, and we do from marketing perspective. I imagine that there's some sort of situation analysis that you guys are doing from an IT perspective as well. And then third, I had it and it just went out the window. But essentially, don't assume just because you have IT people that they're necessarily looking at it. It needs to be a part of your team conversations and making sure that you're having the conversations. Are we protected? What are we doing to be proactive about it? Is that a fair summary?
Yeah. One of the other things that wasn't mentioned is cyber insurance. Most of your, insurance providers out there carry it now. The one that we were up, the cost of it went up 7-fold in the last year.
Yep.
And they're a lot more sophisticated now as all these breaches are happening. So the forms that you fill out, probably a lot of these small companies would need help, looking at it there. But it goes a long way on the different things you're checking off, how much your insurance is going to cost you. If you're not doing anything and you don't have a lot of these other things in place that these guys were talking about, your cost is probably going to be more expensive than you want to pay.
And they may not pay in the event that you're breached.
Yeah, you have to have it looked at.
Yeah.
You really do.
It's called negligence.
Yeah, insurance companies, they're going to find a way not to pay. So
there you go. Exactly.
What's really interesting about these insurance companies? I just had a meeting with one a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember the name of the title, but the insurance company, if you get breached, they have somebody that they put on it and they do the negotiation. So they get in there, they're familiar with these people, they try and negotiate it. But the insurance companies are getting very much on top of this as they are paying out, huge sums of money.
Well, and if you're working with their agent and their agent is going to end up, that agent is likely an attorney. That's what we had to do a claim not related to this at all because of an employee made a mistake. So we did a claim on it and made it right. But the person we were negotiating with and not working with, it was an attorney. And so you're as a business leader, you're at a disadvantage if you're not there. David, what were you going to say?
Where companies make the mistake is if they do get hit, the cost of mitigation can be tens of thousands, if not more, to recover the company, to get the data back, to not have to pay the ransom. And I've run into businesses where they just assume by having the insurance, it includes the mitigation. Now, the insurance may cover the cost of the mitigation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have these mitigation teams that'll jump in and actually recover them. So that's one thing that we're advising businesses to do is if you pay for those managed threat response teams, it includes the cost of the mitigation to recover you. And you want to have that on top of the cybersecurity insurance.
All right. So I guess the summary of what I'm hearing is don't make assumptions that just because you have an IT team or department that they've got you covered or that you're covered if you have insurance. If you haven't actually checked the boxes, you're at risk.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we're going to move on. This is the question I think I'm going to finally get challenged on. And I think it's a valid question is that this list, I mean, think of the number of things that we've talked about that companies can do. It's long. And it's to some degree, I think one of the reasons things don't work out or people don't do anything is it's so long that it can be daunting. And so my question to the team that resulted in me getting a phone call is how much is enough? All right. And so I'm going to bring it on. And Dave, you have a thought about how much is enough that is a little bit says the question is the wrong question.
No, that was the question before, but I could still comment.
Okay, there you go.
You know, I mean, security is continuous, right? It's not something that you're going to pay for one time and be finished with it. So I think, you know, most business leaders out there, they're analytical. They can make decisions as long as they have all the information in front of them. And, you know, trying to figure that from the cheap seats, I mean, you really need to do a complete assessment, security assessment, and put together a security strategic plan. And if you have a strategic plan in front of you, you know what it's going to cost. You've identified as an organization, you know, with your provider, you've identified each area of risk and the percentage of risk that it's going to be on your business. So there's other places that may have a big risk, but financially isn't a big deal. Mm-hmm. So if they know how much things are going to cost, I think it's a lot easier for them to make decisions. And, you know, risk versus reward, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think the other point you were going to make on this is that there isn't an end, that it's an ongoing continuous cycle of identifying risks and mitigating risks was one of your points as well on
Correct.
that. Is that fair?
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
All right, David, what's your thought on that question?
Well, we've all talked about that initial assessment. It's got to be, like you mentioned, ongoing assessments, because the threat landscape keeps changing. I think back 10 years ago of what we considered IT security best practices, and even 5 years ago, and today, completely different. There's new tools, there's new way of doing it, new solutions. So doing those ongoing assessments will expose you to what the current threats are and what type of solutions you need to implement with your security posture to make sure you stay ahead of the bad guys.
Right. So I'm hearing really, so if I'm sales and marketing is kind of where I love to play. And I think if you're a salesperson or a sales leader and you're not constantly evaluating your pipeline and practices that you put in place, your company eventually is going to go out of business. It sounds like the same thing, because these are all kind of that level of threat around you're going to go out of business if you don't take care of this. Tom has a response to my statement.
That's your statement, just in general, just to add here. So I would just said, if you're not in the security business, don't try to be, right? So get a partner, vendor, or both. Mm-hmm. And everyone on this call can help you, either directly refer you to someone for sure. Don't try to be in it. Find a professional that can help you out that's within your means. And also for your security plan, if you can't measure it, it's not worth trying to do.
Tell me what measurement looks like.
For us, are the weaknesses in our code going up or down? So the CEO doesn't know anything. He's not tech, or she's not tech. So my weaknesses are going down. Great. All right. Things are good, right? We're going in the right place. So they're going up. Now, why are they going up? Why? Did we change something in the organization or practices, processes, leadership team? You can actually ask why, as opposed to living life blindly.
All right. So to be fair, Tom, for you, it's easier because you have software that kind of pops out number of errors, and that's an easier thing to measure. And I appreciate the idea of measurement. We try and measure a lot of things, right?
Yep.
So, but David, the things you're doing, is it easy, are the things you're doing, can you look at a dashboard and kind of have a measurement in place of like, this is how secure we are or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's looking at traffic on the firewall, what IP addresses are getting hit, where they're coming from. It's the amount of phishing emails. Something that we tell all of our customers is Office 365, the Microsoft platform, and Google, they do not have the best email security and cleaning, right? We recommend a third-party email security that sits in front of that mail before it hits Google and Microsoft. And companies that are using AI to actually do the anti-phishing, so it reduces the number of potentially risky emails coming through. There's a combination, I mentioned training the employees. That's ongoing because the threat landscape changes, and what they're doing, they're finding new ways to make that employee click. So it's ongoing training where they're scored, where you send fake phishing emails out that are deliberate. And if they fail, HR gets involved. It's part of the policy. They have to be trained. They have to continue. So it's multiple ways of checking, and checks and balances to ensure that you're keeping everything safe.
So the answer to my question is there is no enough. It's more about building a framework of constantly assessing and improving, and then assessing again and improving.
Correct.
Yep.
So I'm going to stand by the idea that maybe that was the wrong question, even though I came up with it a couple of weeks
It
ago.
was good, Mike.
That's all right. I
Yeah,
can be
that's
wrong.
good.
I mean, this isn't my field. So that's,
That's for
you know,
sure.
I mean, yeah, I'm all right with that.
Well, one more thing, we don't have to scare the audience because subscription services are a good thing, and we're seeing security being delivered in a per mailbox per user way that's become very affordable. A lot of managed IT services providers like ourselves include a lot of that security suite within the cost per user, cost per endpoint. I know a lot of the managed security services firms do the same thing. So this is not a giant, financial apple that they have to bite off, and they're just scared to death because it's going to blow up their capex or their opex. That's not the case. It's definitely something that if it's done right, it can be affordable and worth the investment.
All
Well
right.
said.
So this brings up my next question, actually. Great introduction to that. So I'm a fan. There's a movie in the 90s. I think Bill Murray stars in it, something like What About Bob? And he's this kind of crazy guy that's the therapist tells him to do everything in baby steps. And so all of a sudden he's conquering the world just one step at a time. And it's funny, if you haven't seen it, it's worth a look. And so that's exactly to your point, David, that, business leaders that look at this whole picture and aren't taking baby steps forward are probably going to just get overwhelmed and maybe not do anything. So my question to you is, if if I run a middle market company or I'm a business leader and I'm looking at this, what is the one baby step I can take today and just look at today to move my company and make my company safer? And I am going to start that one with David D. Camillus.
Me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
First is you have to get buy-in from the leadership team. Everyone has to be on board that we're making an effort to improve our security posture. Second, I would recommend finding a champion on the team. They don't have to be a security expert, but you need someone who's committed to helping finding the right vendors, they might be compliance related. They might be involved in helping writing policy. They might be in HR, but you need to find a champion within the organization who's willing to take the steps, to make the effort, to track it, to stay on top of it. And if you have buy-in from all the leadership and department heads, then it's going to make a hell of a lot easier to push out these changes to the staff. And they're going to push back. Multi-factor authentication sometimes can be a pain in the ass. Changing your password every 90 days. Not putting a post-it up with their new password on it. It takes the entire organization to agree and adopt and move forward for it to succeed.
Yeah, I can comment that we do dual factor or multi-factor in everything we can. If it's available, we have it. And I get pushback on the team because sometimes I need to log into a website, and some of those websites make it hard for you to do that. And so there's a lot. Yeah, no, it's not a bad thing, but there's definite pushback where there's a struggle with that. All right, Tom, what's your answer? What's the baby step that you see for companies
David
today?
summed it up well. It's culture, really, at the end of the day, to really drive things ahead. If I only get one thing, Mike, for all members of the organization and team, ask yourself, is my organization protected? And can we prove diligence? Can we ask yourself that one thing? If the answer is no, then do everything that we said before. If the answer is yes, then make sure you can measure that. That's my one thing.
All right. That doesn't sound like an easy one thing. It was supposed to be an easy one thing, but I don't think this is an easy subject. Dave Jacobs, what's your answer?
So I'm going to give two.
Okay.
So, I mean, the first thing that I don't want to beat a dead horse, but putting a security strategic plan in place is mostly where you need to start. But anybody out there that does not have multi-factor authentication, I would put that in immediately.
All right. Fair answer. I'm a fan of multi-factor. I think it makes a big difference. And then you get the notification that somebody logged in or tried to log in, and then the factor failed, and now you need to change your password.
There you go.
And look at all your passwords, right? Yeah. So
take the password risk out of the equation. If it's as simple as having this with you to get in, what's the big deal?
Right.
That's right. So, any last words before we shift on to our next part of our conversation? No? All right,
No.
We're good. All right, so folks, we're ending up today, but before we head out, I want to invite you to our next one. We're going to talk about how to hire and retain great employees this year. And I tell you that is not a small pain for any company on the planet at this point. I hear it's a little bit easier on white collar, not so easy on blue collar. We have some experts coming in a week from today, noon Mountain, and we'll be talking with that. And with that, I'm going to thank my panel. Thank you all for your time. We're finishing up for the day. I appreciate it, and have a great weekend. Have
Thanks,
a great
Bob.
holiday weekend.
Back at all of you. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Guys.
Much.